Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we've got a really interesting guest, Nick Malone. And Nick, you've been a long-time sales executive. You're Chief Revenue Officer today at XTM. You lead global operations. You've lived in the US and Europe and Asia. You've overseen not only sales operations, but you've also overseen a lot of different functions. Right now, you have the entire go-to-market strategy underneath you. You've got a really great perspective of cultures and how you develop and foster teams, operate globally in a B2B environment. And you're at a company right now that is helping other businesses adopt an AI native perspective and keep up with the pace that we all know that we need to these days. We're going to be talking about how to become a successful AI native company. What I love that I heard is you and I share something, which we have kids that are just for the first time going off to college right now. And as parents, we're very, very proud of them. It makes us a little bit nervous at the same time. But you also, throughout all of that, being a father and living internationally and everything, you've competed in triathlons that actually mount mountains, go up and down mountains as you're competing on the triathlons. I have to give it to you. I'm not sure I would have that kind of stamina. But here's what I'd love to do. I'd love to give you an opportunity to expand a little bit more on your background before we get started and talk about how to become a successful AI native company.
Great. Well, Steve, yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. I'm fortunate that across my career, which it spans over 28, 29 years now, I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to live and work in different geographies. Very much enjoyed in my early 20s living in the US. Fantastic experience there. Obviously, my home country here in the UK, where I spent a lot of my career. And I've also had the privilege of living in other parts of the world that are less charted. My family and I had the opportunity to go work in Kazakhstan in Central Asia. So we spent 5 years, in fact, over there, which was a really interesting experience, very different cultural experience. I've had the opportunity to work for companies that are global of nature, and with that comes the opportunity to work in different cultures, learn different perspectives on the business. And as you said, although most of my career has been on the commercial side of the business, I've also had the opportunity to work in different functions, sales, operations. I've run transformation programs for national companies as well as driving the go-to-market agenda, as I am here at XTM at the moment, which, as you say, it's an AI native globalization platform. So we effectively are a partner helping companies grow their business across international borders whilst looking after their brand and their tone of voice and making sure that their customers have a fantastic experience.
I have to ask you just up front, your definition, right? What is a successful AI native company? We can kind of come up with some ideas on that, but you're helping companies do this globally every single day. What's your definition of an AI native company and how it becomes a successful AI native company?
I guess first and foremost, a lot of it depends on a little bit of culture. A company's got to be willing to go into uncharted territories, to be willing to experiment. And I think at the moment it's being helped a lot by the media frenzy about AI. And what do I mean by that? A lot of the companies that we work with around the world, there are boards that are giving mandates to the executive leadership teams to invest in AI. They may not even be sure what the outcome is going to be. They're not overly specific, but they know there's something there. First of all, it's mandatory to go and dig deep and experiment and understand in what ways can you use the AI capabilities today to improve operational performance, possibly remove cost, definitely expand on productivity. And that's one of the areas that we're helping our customers on. In the globalization world, essentially, we help our customers take their content to new audiences around the world. Now, the traditional way, if you rewind a few decades, was that you have your content, let's say it's in English, a professional linguist would translate that into multiple languages. They do it, making sure that they respect your brand, your tone, they do it accurately, and so on. And over the course of time, technology has complemented that. Machine translation technologies come on, which essentially automated it and did it quickly. Now we have AI coming to this way as well, which is helping companies to do more with the same, more with less. And XTM has been pioneering in this space for many, many years. We're pioneering as the AI world has come, not only in deploying this technology to our customers, which is a huge cost saving and ability to drive performance and speed to market, but we're also, of course, seeking to adopt AI technology internally so that we as a company can also operate in our leanest form and be as most productive as we can.
I've talked to many, many executives that, yes, their board is asking them, CMOs, CROs, but their CEOs asking them, what's your AI strategy? They don't have a particular outcome other than it's going to help the business, but they know that there's something there. There's a competitive advantage, or just we're going to be behind if we don't. You're having conversations with customers every single day. And those conversations, they expect an outcome. They expect something that's going to be achievable. And we're all operating under the assumption that we've got to do it faster and we've got to provide more value than ever. AI has set those expectations. How are you seeing AI impacting outcomes? Because I know you're asked that question every single day. And it's not just about let's become more efficient. A successful AI native company is one that's going to have better outcomes and better value for the clients. How do you translate that? How do you, when we're not even in, our boards don't even know what the outcomes that they're really looking for, how are you bridging that chasm with your customers, your prospects?
Yeah, well, quite frankly, it's a value-led conversation. Our value proposition at the moment is so compelling. We literally just need to go and convey that to the customer. For the 1,000 customers that we already have on our books, our value proposition is we've released an AI module that complements what you've already invested in. It is likely to reduce your operating cost of linguistic services by 50 to 80%. And the time it takes to enjoy that saving is the time it takes you to switch it on. When you do the ROI calculations on that, it is phenomenally compelling. So the next element to it is to express to people the one, depending on the level of the organization you're talking to, people can be a little bit nervous. If you're going to save us all of that money, does that bring any risk to my job or my team? Because what are we going to do? You know, and that's a very valid question. For the C-suite, able to take out such huge percentages of cost in a particular area of the business is extremely exciting, but people are always skeptical. So what we find is people have an enthusiasm as long as you articulate the value, but they want to trust but verify. That's great. Let's do a trial. Let's just check that what you're telling me is going to deliver, as you say, the outcome that we're expecting, so that then we can lean in hard and run fast. So I think the onus is on us at XTM. It's to talk to the people that are familiar with our part of the business. For any company that's providing an AI offering that is going to drive value, I think it has to be value-led conversation. What is the outcome? Let me prove it to you.
Yeah, and that's the part that can be difficult. But it sounds like you've got that kind of down to a science. I think that's the first big takeaway here is an AI native company has to be, successful AI native company has to be tied to outcomes. In the end, that's what it's all about. So how do you break that down? You mentioned in there that a lot of your prospects and your customers worry about what does it do to them and their teams. We all worry about AI, taking our jobs away and everything. I know you have to address that, but you also talked a lot in our last conversation about how do we hire for this environment? How do we hire in an AI native successful company? And how has that changed? So 2 questions. How do you belay the fears of you're going to get rid of a big portion of my team or my job? And how do you then internally hire and recommend for all those that are going to be listening here how to hire for an AI native company?
I think it's the traditional three core pillars of the process, which is people, process, and technology, right? So on the people side of the equation, as we're taking our offering to market, it's about awareness, which is a combination of marketing. It's a combination of enabling our internal staff who are then able to convey the message externally. The product itself, obviously, it has to be fit for purpose. It has to truly deliver on the promise of that. And then, of course, the performance. We need to be able to get those outcomes. When we talk about hiring, it's a great question. Of course, we're all playing with AI in one way, shape, or form. At least we should all be playing with it in some way, shape, or form. And the more we play with it, the more we start to experience how quickly and how informative it can be, the more sophisticated we can start with it. So I give an example. We recently hired a new chief marketing officer. And so part of that interview process, of course, is we want to understand how you would utilize AI within XTM for the purposes of marketing, for doing function working at a high level of productivity. Part of that interview process was talking about the topic, asking perspectives, but it was also about, great, show us. Let's do an experiment right now, live. Share your screen, show us what you've been working on, come up with a scenario. We really put people through the paces. And I think historically, I suppose, one could imagine that the folks in the C-suite are leaders. We need to know a little bit of stuff, but we don't necessarily have to do it. There are other folks a little bit down the organization who actually do the work. I think that paradigm shifted a little bit now. I think that AI is something we need to be leading by example. Now, of course, there's leading by example to a certain extent, and then there's getting right down into the mechanics of complex AI workflows within a business. But in my mind, the C-suite today should be using AI and be able to demonstrate that and lead by example within an organization. And that's exactly what we put our candidates through during the interview process. And I can tell you now, one of them fared very well, and that outcome presented itself. And what we've seen since that lady joined our business is a huge amount of productivity, not only in terms of her leading by example, but by the fact she's showing people the art of the possible. And the pace of change is, quite frankly, phenomenal. I think there's a really good test case there for us internally, is that when you bring people on board who've got that energy, who've got the learning for life attitude, who are willing to experiment, we don't fail. It's a learning moment. That kind of attitude is helping us to push the boundaries internally.
You know, it was interesting. I just had a conversation on Monday, so a couple of days ago, and this company had instituted a competition internally where all the different departments were vibe coding, and they use Lovable and all kinds of different tools to see what they could do on their own to accelerate the use of AI in their traditional workflows that they're using today.
We invite people to come onto our all hands and show, how are you using AI? Show us something cool, get people excited, demonstrate the art of the possible. And it's everywhere. It's all functions, all levels, all departments. It's fostering that creativity, the willingness to embrace innovation, push the boundaries within guardrails. I should definitely add that. You don't want people taking sensitive data, customer data, financial data, and putting it out in ChatGPT, in unregulated environment. So, of course, we at XTM, we have agreements in place with our chosen providers where the data that we're putting in there is not then used beyond that. It's super important to maintain that regulation. Again, within the parameters of that guardrail, we really want to promote the experimentation. So, yes, similarly to the people you were speaking to at the other companies, promoting that experimentation, giving people the time, blocking an hour every day to learn, experiment. Pretty valuable use of time.
Today, and I know you oversee the go-to-market team, so I'd love to get your thought on this, but the thought is that every go-to-market team member, whether you're in product or sales or marketing or customer success, that they're on AI every day, doing their portion of the workflow. If, as leaders, we're not stimulating experimentation, if we're not promoting it, we're not rewarding it, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot a bit, because that's what it takes. I guess the question in there is that part of being a successful AI native company, is that from the C-suite down, we're promoting and fostering an environment of experimentation with AI?
Yeah, I think so. Put the guardrails out. Here at XTM, we actually have our chief operating officer has an AI team. And what his role is right now is to essentially enable us to go to agentic workflow. So not just working with individual tools and individual agents, but how do you string an entire workflow together, which engages multiple agents across the workflow that maybe touches different departments and strings it all together to get an outcome. Whilst we're promoting adoption and experimentation within the company, as I said, we can all geek out with ChatGPT and ask some questions, but when you get to building enterprise grade, multifunctional workflows that are touching multiple agents and so on and so forth, there's a little bit more to it than the experimentation. And that's why our COO has taken it upon himself to build a team that works then with all of those different departments to build those enterprise grade workflows, but leveraging all of the agentic capability that we have in the business.
Do you have some examples? You're obviously, as a company, doing quite a bit. It's what you offer to your clients. You're doing quite a bit internally. Just some examples of how AI has changed the way that you work every day that you wouldn't mind sharing. No data or no names or anything, but just some examples that we could understand.
Yeah, well, as Chief Revenue Officer, one of the places I spend my time is with customers. We might have an account executive who says, Nick, we'd love you to come and meet customer ABC. Normally, the old-fashioned way of doing that would be that they would prepare me a briefing document. And that briefing document, they'd probably typed out by hand. Who are we meeting? What's the history? How much do they spend with us? What do we think the opportunities are? What is their business drivers, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we have a Gemini gem that prepares all of that, not for them. I prepare it for myself. So an account executive may say, hey, Nick, I want you to meet this customer. I don't ask them to prepare me a briefing. I go to my own Gemini gem and I say, please prepare me to meet with customer ABC. And it prepares me a document ready based on the way I've described what I want as a template. And it gets all of the information that informs me and gets me ready for that meeting. It uses customer support ticket data. It gets the financial data. It gets the data from the CRM. There's nothing I don't need. And of course, it also researches what that customer's priorities are based on what's available in the open web. That document, which is created by Gemini Mac, is for me. I haven't had to ask the account executive any. They've wasted zero time briefing me at that point. So now when I do have my briefing, I've already had an AI brief, and then I'm just validating, is this correct? And is there anything else as an account executive you want me to focus on, anything to be avoided, et cetera, et cetera. So again, just time saving. That may have saved that account executive an hour. So small uses, little things that can help.
And you walk into more well-informed than on average you probably ever have, right? What an account executive can put together in an hour and what Gemini can put together for you to consume in a matter of minutes, night and day difference. What are your recommendations? You're leading the go-to-market, ABM company, ABM go-to-market strategy. We've got C-suite leaders that are going to be consuming this podcast that are in an ABM go-to-market motion as well. So that's one really incredible use case for CROs, right? Getting prepared for meetings with customers. What are some other big areas that you've seen in marketing or customer success or product, RevOps? Is there an equal kind of you should be thinking about this? This is a huge time saver, a huge way that you can increase the quality of what you're doing and the outcomes that you're getting. That was a great example there.
Yeah, I'll give you another one. So battle cards, again, another old favorite of how we train and enable people. Battle cards, as you know, it's supposed to be a quick way to go and remind yourself about how to compete against a particular competitor. Now, our competitive landscape is changing rapidly. The competitive angle and how you combat that particular competitor can vary depending on not only the industry or the segment of the market, but the status of the customer. So again, we used to have quite comprehensive battle cards that you would read as part of an enablement function. We now have a battle card gem. So again, I type in which customer I'm going to see. It will prepare me against that competitor based on all of our battle cards, specifically personalized for that particular account in this moment. It's increasing the personalization with negligible time in a repeatable fashion that helps us be very specific about how we compete out in the marketplace. Another example, this is something we're experimenting with, right? So don't take it as a slam dunk, tried and tested, but it will give you a sense of the attitude that we have towards adopting AI internally. Now, one of the key metrics we have in sales in all companies is productivity. How much revenue will a salesperson generate and how quickly from when we employ them, how quickly can they get to that ultimate productivity state? And it might be enterprise business to business sales. It might be 6 months, 9 months or so. So the quicker we're able to get them up to speed, the more productive, the more valuable it is. But we're in a pretty complex industry. There's a lot of technical questions as well as commercial questions. The way we're experimenting at the moment, there's a company we're working, very small, sort of startup company, and their offering allows you to, when you're using technology like this, so we're using Zoom today, when I'm presenting to you, as you ask questions to me, as you're a customer asking me a question, it could be, what's the return on investment? Or do you have single sign-on? Or whatever it is. The tool is actually listening to the conversation. At our end, it's plugged into all of our knowledge bases of customer support and product and enablement and CRM. It's plugged into all that. So as you ask a question, it will put a nudge on the screen of what it thinks is the answer. So as a salesperson, it's very difficult to have the answers to everything. Quite often you will hear a sales guy, oh, I'm not sure of the answer to that. Let me make a note and I'll come back to you with that tomorrow or next week. By having the in-core nudging, we have the opportunity to dramatically reduce the number of times that happens and therefore get our salespeople up to speed more quickly. Now, again, we're early stages in this, but we're quite happy to engage with startups that are innovative, that have what we intuitively think is a really compelling concept. And we're willing to invest a little bit of time and effort to experiment with that. I guess 2 takeaways from that is, again, we're trying to live that innovation attitude. But the other important thing is think about David and Goliath. You don't need to be a huge multinational proven company to experiment or to be working with companies like us. We're looking for innovation that we think can move the needle. We're willing to work with small as well as large players to do that.
So one of the things that you said there that I think is really important that isn't something just to gloss over is you said that's connected to all of our databases. So the Gemini itself, Claude, ChatGPT, the next model that comes out, is in some respects a commodity because we all have it. We all have the same models. What becomes the differentiator is the data, the information that you give it so that it knows you and it knows your clients and what stage they're in, the prospects and everything. I just didn't want to gloss over this, but in your mind, how important is it having the right data to connect to these tools, to a Gemini?
The more data you have connected in, the richer your output. But again, we've all heard that artificial intelligence can hallucinate. You'll even see it in the footnotes of whichever provider you have. If there is a cautionary, do check the data. And I think that's very prudent. It's a way to really get information very quickly and allow you to make informed decisions. I'll give an example. When we're selling our AI technology to our companies, they're translating text or content from one language to another. We can score the quality that an AI system will do that. If you're working in a highly regulated healthcare industry where by law you need to have a human check that data, there's a different proposition in there than if you're dealing with content which is less risky. So we're able to score the quality of an AI translated piece of content to then give the client the option of how they want to manage it. Like, which workflow do we put it on? Can it go straight in production because it's not high risk and it's low risk content? We want to have zero cost or negligible cost attached. Or at the opposite end of the extreme, do we want to make sure that we've had a human review every single word in this document and rubber stamp that, yes, this is perfect and fit for market? There's a number of workflows in between that, but essentially our technology allows a customer to get that optionality or operating behind the scenes and ultimately gives them the most optimal route to market. So using AI, but being cognizant of the fact that there is a quality measure, you do need to check this stuff before you sort of blindly put trust in the bucket.
We've covered so much and I would love to go on like another hour, but there's one last question I wanted to ask, and it's the most important because we can't remember everything. Our poor human brains, we can retain about 2 or 3 things at the same time in a conversation. What's the one thing that you want your C-suite peer executives and other B2B companies to take away from our conversation? If there was one thing for them to take away, what would that one thing be?
If I reflect back on nearly 30 years of sales leadership, the one consistent competitor, the competitor that was there the most, irrespective of the country, irrespective of the company I was working for, the number one competitor was do nothing. Right now, we have a generic mandate that's coming from boards to executives to do something. As we said at the beginning of the conversation, you've got to look at AI. Don't miss the boat. Find out how it's going to add value and experiment. So for me, my take on it is there's never been a better opportunity for people that are working in companies providing AI technology to their customers there's never been a better time to take that message to those organizations. As long as you've got a product that you can demonstrate, firstly, the value, secondly, the ability to deliver on the promise, and you can switch it on, I think there's never been a better time to overcome do nothing, because they're mandated to do something.
Yeah. I love that. I love you made this so simple, right? Don't do nothing. And you've done so much more than nothing. You've embraced it. You're incentivizing it at all levels. You're requiring it. The hiring of your new CMO was a great example of that, of a requirement, but just a cultural move inside of the organization to adopt AI and experiment with it. That's my biggest takeaway, that you're doing so much more than do nothing. You're embedding it culturally within your company. And I think that's a really important takeaway. The mission here of this podcast is to get different perspectives from different C-level executives from all over the world. And if we do that and bring it all together, all of our experiences and our insights, that's the rising tide that lifts all boats. And you've been a great motivation today that we can't do nothing. We've got to do way more than that. We've got to really embed AI culturally into our own organizations. I just wanted to say thank you for coming on and sharing that perspective.
Yeah, pleasure. Great to be here. And I think, there was an English or British cycling team back in the day who really were not performing very well. And it was ultimately, they had a new coach came in. He started focusing on what he called marginal gains, the little things that you can do to ultimately move the needle. So whilst the topic of AI is huge and it might seem like the big silver bullet, I think it's all the little use cases, the marginal gains that when you bring it all together and you have it managed like you would an orchestra, you're going to generate a beautiful production of music and hopefully an efficient and an enjoyable workplace to work in. That puts human at the core rather than human in the loop.